And we're back, and we're one day away from Oklahoma's inaugural game in the SEC. So, yeah, today we got to talk about it. Oklahoma, Tennessee, and I'm joined by Charlie Burrs over at the Big Orange Podcast. How are you doing today?
I am doing all right. Excited for this game. I appreciate the invite. Thanks for having me.
No, yeah, it's great to make new friends as we enter in a conference, and I guess leave my old ones behind.
Yeah, it's interesting seeing this move actually come to fruition because you know, it was sort of talked about for a long time, but I don't know, just having been like at SEC my entire life and fandom, it's almost something that I was like, yeah, that would be interesting, but like that's never actually going to happen. And here we are. It really did. I will at least say this: you guys, so much more than especially Missouri. I feel like you fit in more here to the SEC. Missouri, I have from the second they joined, I wanted them kicked out of this league. They do not fit in. They're obviously not in the South or the East. You guys aren't either, but at least like culturally, it makes more sense with Oklahoma. Like you sort of get it more. Missouri, I don't know. And if Vandy too, Vandy, who is in the South and the East, they don't get it either. they could go. But yeah, I'm excited to see how this actually goes now that the big experiment is finally here.
Well, and listen, Oklahoma fans will be happy to hear you talk crap on Mizzou because they're not fans of them for some reason. Like Mizzou fans have felt like they have decided to grow a backbone this year and act like they're the biggest and best thing on the
Boy.
block. But listen, Mizzou just they'll go do Missouri things. But Tennessee is very familiar with Oklahoma because we played y'all in 14 and. Listen, y'all should have had us in 2015, but somehow, some way, Sooner Magic showed up in Neyland Stadium, and that's all she wrote.
Yeah, those games were pretty ugly. I would say if you talk to most Tennessee fans, including myself, we would say, yeah, those were the Butch Jones years. I wouldn't count those as actual. Like we like to forget that those ever occurred. And you might be from the outside, you might be saying, oh well, Butch Jones won like 9 games a couple of years. Yeah, but it was a painful 9 games. That guy was a complete clown. And I was at the 2015 Oklahoma game. It is, and I think you've seen Oklahoma players even say this. It was one of the loudest college football environments I've ever seen. It was absolutely insane. What a show it was, truly. I mean, Baker Mayfield went crazy and closed that game out, and it was terrible. That was the first football game. My wife, who is not, she's not a Tennessee fan at all, and just kind of agnostic. That was the first Tennessee game she ever went to, and she got to see the true pain of what it meant to be a UT fan back then. Thankfully, it's been a little better in the last few years. But yeah, that was truly, despite the loss for Tennessee, one of the greater games I've ever been to in that stadium.
Yeah, I remember watching that and watching Sterling Shepard just lay out flat, going to the end zone. I mean, that was a comeback for the ages. But I love y'all stadium. I can't wait to get out there next year, assuming they keep the schedule the way it should go. Can't wait to get out there next year. You guys have the sixth biggest stadium in college football, so I'm sure it's louder than it is in Norman just by having 20,000 more fans than
we try.
Yes. So, well, I mean, listen, we got to dive into it because this is a big game. This is Oklahoma's first game into the SEC. And there was actually an interesting statistic put out the other day about this game from Eli Letterman over at ESPN. And I want you to think about this. Like, Tennessee has an honor here. You guys are a touchdown favorite in this game. It's the first time OU has been a touchdown home underdog since November 21st of 1998 versus Texas Tech. A ranked Oklahoma team hasn't been a home dog of more than 4 points since at least 1978. So Tennessee is in some, or should we say, elite company. Like they get to potentially do something that not a lot of teams have done before at Norman. So just kind of looking at it without deep diving into it, what's your initial thoughts about how this game's going to go?
Well, let me start off by saying that Tennessee fans are as shocked as you are. By the current set of events, the turn that things took for Tennessee after they hired Danny White, the current AD, and Josh Heupel. I mean, it's been crazy. The last year, an Elite Eight in basketball, a national championship in baseball, and then we're here, and suddenly the football team. I think a lot of people thought coming into the season, okay, this football team, if Nico ends up being the real deal, you could be on to something. I think probably one of the main things people didn't see coming as much as the defense, specifically the defensive line for this team. Um, it is a set of dudes where Tennessee can rotate out 5 guys and put in 5 fresh new ones, and you don't really see that much of a drop off. It's pretty crazy. Like, it's a hellacious unit that they can put out there on the defensive front, and that is such a difference maker in this game. And I said this on our show this week, the Big Orange Podcast, as we already mentioned. In our preview for this game, I think this is just bad timing for Oklahoma. I think this is a team who eventually, given time, Jackson Arnold's going to grow. And Jackson Arnold needs some time behind a better offensive line because he's getting eaten alive. And you need some time to get some dudes back. I know some of these injuries are season ending, and there's a lot going on there. But he needs time to get it together. The defense is already good, although they have injuries too. And Tennessee is just coming in having played 3 joke teams. Well, one that we thought was not going to be a joke in NC State, and they ended up being a joke. But regardless, a team that Tennessee beat by 41 points, and they have looked really, really good all throughout that on the offensive and the defensive side of the ball. And then Oklahoma is just a little injury riddled right now, and Jackson Arnold is not the guy that I think you're going to see in time. And so just at the moment, Tennessee seems like the more complete team. And while in reality, I think given a long-term set of events, they might end up in similar places. But at this exact moment, I think Tennessee just has more going for them, is how I kind of look at it. Am I one of those people that's coming in like a lot of Tennessee fans right now going, we're going to go stomp a mud hole in Oklahoma. Get ready, because here we come. I want to say that would be great, but realistically, I personally do not feel that way at this exact moment.
Yeah, I'm in a lot of Facebook groups. I'm specifically in one. It's like an SEC group, and I don't like these people are crazy. They're absolutely nuts. They literally think Oklahoma's going to get beat by 50, and I'm just like, so this is where I'm coming from. I looked at the teams y'all played. You literally played the worst team in college football this year in Kent State. Like, I mean, that team is bottom in offense and defense. Played an FCS team in Chattanooga. And NC State, like you said, should have been a good team. Struggled against Western Carolina, struggling against Louisiana Tech. Like, they gave y'all a decent game for a little bit, and then y'all just pulled ahead. NC State's, like, I think in the hundreds when it comes to total defense. Like, I don't know what to expect from this Tennessee team. I look at them and I say, like, you guys have a young DB room. Like Edris Farouk and Boo Carter. I think those are 2 true freshmen. I think Edris Farouk, Oklahoma, at least early in that cycle, was going after him. So we should be somewhat familiar with him. But I'm skeptical of y'all's DB room. And I say this because Nick Anderson for Oklahoma is coming back at the wide receiver position. If you're not familiar with him, 768 yards last year, 10 touchdowns. I really feel like this Oklahoma offense is going to open up this week. I really feel like when you get Nick Anderson out there, you get some size. You can't stack the box. You know, these DBs are going to have to play a little bit farther out than what some of the previous 3 teams have played on us. And I feel like Oklahoma is going to test your guys' secondary and have a little bit of success. So, I mean, am I crazy to think, hey, like 7-point spread, like this probably going to be a 3-point game when it's all said and done. And you look at it at the end of the day and go, maybe Oklahoma and Tennessee are closer than we thought.
It is absolutely no secret that in Josh Heupel's time at Tennessee, the defensive backfield has been at times absolutely atrocious. I mean, it has been easily the biggest weakness on this football team, and they've kind of flipped it over after this offseason. And when you really take a look at it, I mean, they are starting a walk-on at one of these positions in Will Brooks. And now that walk-on had a pick 6 against NC State, so take
85 yards.
Yeah, so he's definitely not bad, and I think he's one of those guys where they sort of say he's not the most physically gifted, but he always knows where to be. He's a veteran. He's smart, that sort of type of player. But outside of that, I mean, some of the guys that you mentioned, Boo Carter in particular, I mean, he's a 4 borderline 5-star guy, incredibly athletically gifted. Um, and he's a guy that has to grow for sure, but a dude who can just make plays, and he already has been doing that in his short time in these first 3 games. And so there's guys like that where you think in time they're going to be great, but right now they're still just raw and young. You have Jermon McCoy, who's a guy from Oregon State that they brought in. He's looking like a dog. I will say it has to prove itself out, and he has to do it against better teams. But he has made some plays that sort of make you go, okay, all right, this guy might be a little bit of the real deal. But the real difference maker to me on this defense, and you could speak to this, I don't know, and I don't think Oklahoma. It doesn't seem like Oklahoma knows exactly yet if the center is going to play. I forget his name.
Branson Hickman.
Branson Hickman.
He was the 4th best center in college football last year.
Yeah, so there you go. And I think it's up in the air whether he's going to play or not. But if you take the current state of the offensive line for Oklahoma against the current state of Tennessee's defensive line, I mean, Tennessee's defensive line has barely had to play in these first 3 games. And that's not like, oh, well, they might not have experience. I mean, most of these guys have played an entire season of SEC football at least. Amari Thomas has been at Tennessee for 15 years. I mean, he is a stalwart guy, kind of the leader of that unit. James Pierce, obviously, in some mock-ups for the NFL drafts, number 1 draft pick. I don't know if I see that actually happening, but it's just true. I don't know. And I mean, you just have a set of dogs up front there, and they have eaten. Specifically, let's put aside the FCS teams that Tennessee has played. They ate NC State alive. They had 13 tackles for loss against NC State, and NC State had 10 first downs in that game. I mean, more tackles for loss than first downs, and so far only 4 sacks. But the thing is that I think these teams have been so scared. Like NC State just rolled out Grayson McCall a lot in that game and tried to do things to avoid. I assume Oklahoma's probably going to do something similar, but they just did things to try to avoid those sacks in general. And in most of these games, like James Pierce has barely played. He played 10 snaps against UTC. Like he just hasn't played that much. And I could just see if you can stay up in not Grace McCall, in Jackson Arnold's face all game long, the DBs aren't as big of a factor. But of course, it's a big if. We'll see. And again, I think a huge piece of that is whether that center comes back for Oklahoma. I mean, it's gonna be if this happens, that's bad news for Oklahoma. If this happens, that's bad news for Tennessee. Sort of a situation. Because, I mean, if Oklahoma can get cooking on offense, that's bad news for Tennessee. Because I think Oklahoma's defense is the real deal. At least it seems like so far. And because that real advantage for Tennessee's defense sits at the defensive line, and they got to eat to find success here.
Yeah, so we released the injury report a little earlier today, and Branson Hickman was listed as questionable. We've kind of been under the impression if he's healthy enough to, like, if he's at 75%, this dude's going. Because you got to have him. You got to have him. Because Troy Everett, one of our guards from last year, which left guard has kind of been an iffy position for us, finding somebody to play right there after he's supposedly going to play this game. It looks like he's going to play. So if you can get him out there, I feel like you got to put Branson Hickman out there and at least just see for a couple drives, can he do it? Can he hold his own? I feel like y'all are probably going to put Pierce on our left tackle, Sexton, because Tarquin's been the best tackle for us, and I feel like you guys can try to put him on the worst. I feel like Oklahoma's probably going to run at least one tight end every time, but maybe 2 to provide a little bit of blocking support against Pierce. The biggest thing for Jackson Arnold against your guys' defensive line is, can he get the ball out fast enough, right? Can he make those decisions quickly? Can a guy like Deion Burks burn a couple of your DBs a couple times, and maybe Jackson Arnold overthrow him a little bit so that, Deion Burks has an opportunity to kind of get down there and try to get to that ball. That's kind of what I'm watching for your guys' defensive line versus Jackson Arnold, because we saw it in the bowl game. Jackson Arnold, he has an arm like nobody's business.
Yeah, I mean, the dude uh, speaking of the long ball, like he has it all as far as that goes. He just hasn't had the the time and sort of the luxury that Nico has had, and maybe eventually Nico has a higher ceiling. I don't. We'll see. Um, but let me be clear. I I am definitely concerned about these DBs, and it's not from anything I've seen. I mean, so far they barely had to try, and it's a fairly new room. They could go out there and play like a bunch of dogs, and then it doesn't matter. Like I said, I mean, I think you have some promise with a guy like Jermon McCoy, who I already brought up, um, and maybe they just perform above their head, and that would be great. But yeah, I mean, it definitely concerns me. But thankfully, at the linebacker spot, you got a guy in Keenan Peely who's like 44 years old. He came from BYU. I mean, he's literally, I think he's 26, and has been laying guys out, almost a little too much, like to the point where you're like, okay, let's calm it down. It's UTC. Everybody chill. Like, and but then you got exciting young guys at the linebacker spot like Aaron Carter, and I think there's a lot of help there too, in addition to the defensive line. But the DBs, I think that Nick Anderson addition, that could definitely be a difference maker, just to do because what, he's like 6'4", right?
Yeah, he's
Like
6'4".
a dude you can just toss it up to and go, please go get this 50-50 ball. Here you go, my man, and give it a try. That's a big factor, and I don't want to downplay that. But the thing that I've heard, and the thing that I've heard, I mean, I was listening to an interview with Barry Trammell, from Tulsa, today, and he was just kind of laying it out. I mean, he was sort of like, I'll be honest, I don't know that Jackson Arnold's going to have time to throw the ball, like you sort of said, and so good luck to him. That's gonna be such a huge piece of all of this. There's gonna be early indications in this game. I think it's gonna be that is Tennessee all up in Jackson Arnold's grill, and I think on the offensive side of the ball for Tennessee, the one that y'all need to look out for, that could mean kind of doomsday for Oklahoma, is, will Tennessee be able to run the ball? And you may be getting to questions about this, but like, if Tennessee can run the ball, this is bad news for Oklahoma, because that's how Tennessee wins on the offensive side.
Yeah, and I said that in the previous episode. If Tennessee is able to run the ball with, like, let's say 5-yard average success, Oklahoma loses this game. There ain't no problem. They lose this game because I think Nico's going to get his in the passing game. I think it's going to be a very uncomfortable him getting it, but he's going to get it. So I think the best spot for Oklahoma is to try to make Tennessee as one-dimensional as possible, meaning make a redshirt freshman beat you. But I think this is where we got to turn the conversation, right? Everybody think Tennessee's offense is going to continue on the hot streak that they've been on. And man, like, this Oklahoma defense, I'm not going to say it's the best in the SEC, but they definitely, I think, have a top 3 defensive line in the SEC. And I think this is a top 5 defense in the SEC overall. You're very experienced in your defensive back room. You bring in a guy from Des Malone who, from San Diego State, the transfer portal, he was very good in zone coverage. He only allowed 3 total touchdowns in his career so far. Very good man or zone coverage cornerback. Needs to improve in man a little bit, but you got Billy Bowman. You saw him last year. Like, he should have been a Paycom Jim Thorpe Award finalist. Didn't end up getting there. He should get there this year. And then, Oklahoma's like safety, like Robert Spears Jennings, he's the highest graded safety in the country. Then you look at Oklahoma's defensive line. Like, they are probably, 4 in their rotation deep. Like, they can go all the way to their 4th string guy, and it would probably be second in most teams' defensive line room. Like, Oklahoma is just deep in every aspect of this defense, and I expect them to make Nico uncomfortable. And I feel like they're going to make Nico make a mistake. So, I mean, what do you expect from your Tennessee offense this week?
God, that's the entire question in this game to me, because I don't know, my personal feeling, just having watched the offense for you all, is that I obviously I hope for your sake that Center comes back and that everybody plays well. But even, I mean, I've heard some analysis like that kid's not even been practicing. Like, let's just assume he's not 100%, and Tennessee's defense does eat, and you're kind of struggling to score the football. Like, it all comes down to whether Tennessee can score like they can against lesser defenses. That's what this game boils down to in the most fundamental sense. And probably the biggest thing in this entire game that we don't know about is how Nico's going to perform under the big lights in a primetime game. And I your guess is as good as mine as far as that goes, because some dudes go out there and they're Johnny Manziel. When those lights are on, they shine the brightest, and they just go out and they make the play and they kill you, and it's tough. And then some guys, like especially when they're young, maybe I think regardless, in time, Nico will figure out a way to operate in a spot like this because you get used to it. You've been there, you've done that. But a lot of guys in this exact spot might crumble because they're just, the moment's just too big. I'm a redshirt freshman. Oh my gosh, I just wasn't ready. And inherently in his ability, does he contain the ability to probably like tear Oklahoma limb from limb? Yeah, probably in time. Does he have it right now? I'm not sure. That's the biggest question. That's what everybody wants to know. And I'm just on pins and needles to find out, to see exactly what he does. But to go all the way back, the thing that I think could help him infinitely is if Tennessee can run the ball. Can they move a little earth and actually get, running downhill? Dylan Sampson is quietly having a Heisman campaign right now. And I don't think anybody said anything about it. This kid has 9 touchdowns already. Tennessee ran for 450 yards against Kent State. And you can say, oh, it's just Kent State. But listen, 450 yards.
That's hard to do against anybody.
Exactly. Like, I get it. It is definitely just Kent State. They stink out loud. But, like, dude, 450 yards. They ran for 250 against NC State and 3-something against UTC. This is a serious rushing attack. And if they can get going and then that frees up Nico, you start having to stack the box, that's a serious problem. Because I'll say this, the only defense in Josh Heupel's time at Tennessee, the only defense that I have seen consistently be able to stop what he does is Georgia. And it is purely because they can stop Tennessee's run game with a light box. End of sentence. That if you can do that comprehensively for 60 minutes, you could probably stop the offense that Josh Heupel's trying to run. There's almost no teams that can do that. It's just so hard. And especially now, I think Dylan Sampson's probably the best running back he's had in his time at Tennessee. And this is probably, if Lance Hurd plays, now Lance Hurd on the offensive line, he's also questionable, just like the offensive lineman for Oklahoma. I mean, he's the left tackle. He's the blind side for Nico. And he's questionable whether he's going to play or not. There's definitely some rogue factors there, but if Tennessee can get running, that's where, if you're an Oklahoma fan, you would see that and go, oh no, oh boy, like we either fix this or we're in for a long night. And whether that happens or not, like I said, your guess is as good as mine.
Yeah, no, I'm pretty confident that the Oklahoma defense is going to step up here. And you can correct me if I'm wrong if you guys thought about this, but remember, Josh Heupel is out of the Levy tree. And we have guys currently here in our system that are from the Levy tree. I said Levy tree. Not the Levy tree. The old Mississippi State head coach. I can't think of his name right now.
Lane Kiffin?
No. Mississippi State head coach.
Jeff Libby.
No. The old one.
It's Mike Leach.
Mike Leach. There we go. Couldn't think of it. He's out of the Leach tree. Oklahoma has a couple guys out of the Leach tree currently there. Brent Venables, obviously, he started his career under the Leach tree, playing, trying to go against defenses under the Leach tree. So you imagine he's pretty familiar with an offense that Josh Heupel's going to put out there. Do you think that plays any part into the way that they're going to scheme? Like, do you think Oklahoma will be ready for a Josh Heupel offense?
I'll just tell you what I've seen a lot of in Josh Heupel's time here. I've gone through, as media, I have gone through a lot of these weeks leading up, and a lot of opposing fan bases go, they don't even know what's coming. Our defense will be the one that stops what Josh Heupel does. And then Josh Heupel goes out there and he drops 40 points on them. I have seen that happen a whole set of times. And I'm not saying that's going to happen here, but I would say I won't be surprised if it does. Specifically, I think the situation that's happened a lot with Heupel is if you let him get out early and do big things right at the jump. I mean, try to think some of those games. Missouri, and he's been here for 3 years. 2 of the games against Missouri, he jumped on them like 24-0 in the first quarter, just buries them, and you're done. I mean, you're done at that point. He did it to Kentucky in 22, and I don't want to say that there's some hate for the Stoops family coming from Heupel,
Oh
but
no,
I would
there's
say
hate.
the way that he treats Mark Stoops, you wouldn't know if they do like each other. I just think that that's, if you get down to this team, that's a perilous spot to be in. Now, if you can be up, and specifically up by halftime, you're in a good spot. And Heupel has struggled in primetime spots on the road. It really, I mean, he beat Kentucky last year. Again, I mean, Stoops family. Not to say that that's a bad omen for you guys, but he has had success against the only active Stoops in college football. But I, he can beat Kentucky in that spot, but Florida last year, absolute disaster. Alabama last year, that was a 3:30 game, but close enough. You were up by 14 at the half, then absolute disaster in the second half. I mean, it just, there's been something about a primetime spot on the road for Josh Heupel that's been a mental block, and I don't know what it is, but maybe it manifests itself yet again here. Even though you are theoretically the more complete team, does it happen again? I don't know.
Well, and I would imagine him coming on the road to Norman, returning back here, which I don't think he's been to Norman since we've expanded the South end zone and everything. Like
I
this is
believe so.
probably going to be surreal for him. Like this is like I would feel like there's going to be a wave of emotions. And honestly, I'm hoping Oklahoma does something with a video to like try to get in his head. But like, no, like in all seriousness, like I feel like coming back to Norman, like I feel like it's going to be a wave of emotions for him. Like he's going to have like memories and flashbacks and things like that. The other thing I'm curious is on offense, like, are you all still doing a lot of hand signals or signs on the sidelines? Or are you guys pretty much just using straight helmet communication? Because I think this is going to be one of the first games where we really find out how well helmet communication works and in a hostile environment. Because I'm curious. I mean, we've seen Jackson Arnold have times hearing in the stadium. I'm curious if Nico is going to be doing this a lot, trying to hear the play call if you guys are not utilizing signs and things like that on the sidelines.
I would say I hope they have a plan for everything, because I mean I think they're going primarily the helmet communication, and Josh actually got asked about that in a press conference earlier this week, and he kind of said like, oh yeah, we're not too worried about it. And I don't know what contingency plans he's making. That guy says nothing in press conferences. I mean, he's a closed book. And even when it comes to this stuff, I mean, the stuff that he's the most closed about is the whole thing with Oklahoma. I mean, I don't know exactly how he feels about it. I know it's weird to the point where Bob Stoops felt he needed to release a statement this week, and supposedly like they've been him and Bob have both been asked for interviews this week to talk about the situation. They both refused.
Yeah.
I don't know what's going on there, but it's something. But the everything with that situation and coming back to Norman, and again, talking about playing in a primetime spot. I'm not sure what the element is that has plagued them, because last year with the hand signals, they had a tough time in a primetime spot. Will it be the same with the helmet communication? Or does the helmet communication fix it? I'm not sure. But of course, where they really thrive is when they can get you in tempo. And because, Venables is going to want to run a defense where he can throw you off, where he's going to show things to Nico that are a fugazi, and he's going to try to bait him into interceptions. And the entire way that Tennessee can win is in that tempo. Hit him with a big play, go down, snap the ball immediately, so that they can't even get into anything resembling something that's harder to play against. And yeah, that's another element in this game that's sort of like honestly, we'll see. I'm genuinely not sure how they treat it, how they go about it. I hope they have a contingency plan if those things are going off the rails, but do they? I don't know, because Josh Heupel refuses to say.
I don't know, and I don't think a lot of teams have a contingency for that. But I will say, because you were talking about Brent Venables doing, weird things with his defense to kind of show, I think you're going to see, and I mean, I don't know if you're familiar with the BV defense, but he likes to run, the cheetah, right? We have a lot of guys on our team that can play the cheetah, and a lot of them can move out into the secondary. I'm really curious to see how many times we see 7 DBs on the field for Oklahoma. And they think, oh, this is obviously a running opportunity. But then 2 of these guys can shift back up into the linebacker position and try to stop the run. Right. I'm curious to see how much of that are we going to see to throw a young quarterback like Nico off? Are they going to let him audible to even have those kind of opportunities?
Yeah, I get the feeling that Venables is going to emphasize the run and try to stop that. So, because like I said, I mean, if you can cut that element out, that cuts off such an important piece of this offense. And if you think that you have, like I said, if you can be like Georgia and you can stop this run with a light box, that's, it's going to be a tough night for Tennessee. So we talked about that on our podcast this week. I don't know exactly what he'll do, but you can't give him the advantage in that case. And that's where the tempo can come into play. I mean, it has, and that's why things compound so badly on teams that Tennessee gets rolling against, is because they do that. Oh, they hit you with a big shot, 40-yard shot. Well, they come straight down and they don't even give you time to get set up, and suddenly they've scored a touchdown on you in 3 plays. And these things just get rolling so quickly, and you have to find a way to prevent that. And what that is, I'm not sure, but I know that Oklahoma and its staff are certainly familiar with Heupel. Got a dude on that staff that was in his wedding. So I would hope that they have some kind of plan there, but we'll see. I don't know.
All right. Well, Tennessee's favored by 7 right now. It opened up at 7.5. So what's your final score prediction for the game?
I'll stick with the one that I gave on my own show this week on Monday. I said 34-24 Tennessee, but the exact way that I think that will go, I think it will be a close grind 'em out game. It's not going to be a blowout. I think that a blowout is in the realm of possibility. I just think it's unlikely. Like it would be contingent on Tennessee going up quickly and staying up, and I just, on the road in that spot, I just don't see that happening. I think it's going to be maybe Tennessee scores on one of its first few drives, but on the whole, its first probably 5 drives are probably pretty tough. I think they're just getting settled in, tough environment at night. But then, given the full span of the game, they're able to kind of get it together and say, going into the fourth quarter, it's 27-24, and then Tennessee is able to, just with depth and force of will, they orchestrate a back-breaking drive and kind of end it off. Like that's how I see. I am not one of the Tennessee fans that's thinking we're going to come in here, stomp your head in, good night, welcome to the SEC. I will say, welcome to the SEC. It's not going to be a joyous time this whole time. I can tell you from for the past 20 years of experience, it can kick you while you're down, and so be careful. But in this game, I do think just eventually Tennessee wins out with just that little extra step that they have on Oklahoma at the moment.
Well, I've got it 24-21 Oklahoma. I was calling Oklahoma.
That's low scoring.
I think it's going to be a low scoring game. Actually, I do. I think the Oklahoma defense is going to hold Tennessee. And, obviously, I think Oklahoma's had some struggles on offense. So I'm not saying those will continue, but I do think they get a little bit going this week to build off of before they go to Auburn. But I do think it'll be a lower scoring game. And I had Oklahoma winning this game at the beginning of the season. And I'm not going to dwindle off that. I actually think Oklahoma's first real SEC game is next week. I feel like we're pretty familiar with Tennessee. It's at home. Like, I don't know. Like, to me, I'm just like,
Sort of.
I just feel like the first SEC game is next week. Like, I look at it and I go, okay, we go on the road to Auburn next week. It's
and this one just has so many like storylines and emotions, and like this, regardless of the SEC element, this is such a special game, sort of, with the hype piece. And I kind of agree. Like, it doesn't really feel like a league game initially. It just feels, it almost feels just like a really special non-con game, almost, right off the bat. I sort of agree with that. But I think no matter what happens, this is going to be a great one. This is what it's all about. I mean, this is why you come to the SEC, is to play huge games like this. You know, it's not, you're not playing Baylor anymore. This is big boy football. So I'm excited. I'm excited to see how Oklahoma fares. I can tell you, I'm very much more rooting against Texas than I am you guys. I want to see them completely like spin the tires and have a terrible season. Like after this game with Oklahoma, I'm like, hey, do what you want, and I hope you have a good year. But yeah, Texas, I want to see completely flame out. That would be nice. They think they're the real UT. No.
Oh, yeah, no. Yeah, and especially now they got the number 1 seed in the country.
Oh God,
Texas fans just think, because they got Arch Manning and all that, they just think they're it. That's what they think. That's what they believe. So, yeah. Well, hey, appreciate you coming on. Where can everybody find you at? Where can everybody find your content?
Sure. A to Z Sports Nashville is the main spot, and we are the Big Orange podcast. On there is myself, my co-host Zach, every Monday at 6 p.m. Eastern time. If you want to see our preview for the game, we do have our own channel, A to Z Sports Tennessee Vols. We'll have our full preview for the game. You got most of it here, if we're being totally honest. But if you want, Zach's take, it's also there. And go find us. I always say, like, I could tell you my Twitter handle, but none of the Oklahoma fans that listen to this are going to go follow me on Twitter. It doesn't really matter. I had a tweet today that sort of made fun of Oklahoma, and a lot of Oklahoma fans were mad about it. I'm sorry. I don't really care what you think, because you're not the audience that I serve. But yeah, so there's that. That's where I'm at. I really appreciate it, though. This was a lot of fun.
Yeah, no, I appreciate you coming on. Like I said, we got to make new friends now that we're in the SEC. So, we'll be coming out to your place next year. So hopefully Oklahoma can pull off some miracles again. Guys, if you haven't made it this far and you haven't already, make sure you guys hit that like, hit the subscribe button, help the algorithm out a little bit. But hey, we'll see y'all Saturday.